Hello guys. I um I decided I wanted to make a video. Um it's kind of really late right now. It's like 3 a.m. But sometimes I stay awake just thinking and thinking and thinking. Like I just think so deeply on something that it keeps me awake. And you ever have one of those nights where you you just know you're not really going to get much sleep. So I sometimes have these nights where I end up staying awake and or I just like think so much that I don't get much sleep, and today is one of those days. I probably go through that a few times a month. Um I unscrewed one of my light bulbs, so it's not going to be as bright for my eyes. But I think about I know that these videos that I make might not get any viewers. They do get the occasional viewer and commenter, and I appreciate those. I think the videos that I make are um they're not the highest, I guess, form of quality in terms of like content. They're not edited, they're just one single shot, but um I think of someone like Asmongold, and I think I could see it. Trying to understand what appeals to people is one thing I actually think about. I think there's things that appeal to people, um, for better or worse. I think that some things can appeal to people, in a way that is like toxic, and sometimes ways in which uh, appeal appeals to people that can be positive. Excuse me, but um, it's basically like, you think of Nazi Germany. It, I've learned to just unapologetically talk about Nazi Germany and tyranny and stuff because I talk about it a lot, and I I probably don't talk about it enough. Um, because it is one thing I focus on primarily is tyranny. I do some bullshit on the sides, but that's just stuff I do to like think. Um, but it's still something I think about. Um, but you think of Nazi Germany and like what appeals to people in that tyrannical state. Um, what captured the audience, and and I and I would think about this, like, what is it that appeals to people? What was it about Hitler that was so appealing to the masses? And I think about that, about a lot of other things in this world. I think about social media, and I don't want to have like a pessimistic view of like fame and notoriety and things like this. Um like I think I don't really know if I want to be popular, um because I think a lot of what traffics people's attention is largely like controversy. And these things that appeal to people are sometimes what appeals to people is actually really toxic. And the type of traffic that you garner the attention, I suppose, like um they're they're not there's a term in debate where it's like good faith. Good faith is used in terms of arguments, like a good faith argument where I actually don't know the definition, but it's basically like how I understand it is like a good faith argument is something that is actually quite understanding of something and tries to present not even necessarily like a charitable, but to try to understand the virtue in something and to present th- an idea in such a way that um it's basically like it's not even like giving the devil his due. It's more like, trying to find the best perspective on something that um is, how could someone reasonably believe in something or view something? What did someone actually think about something? What did someone actually believe? Um, what's a realistic representation of someone's beliefs? And that is how I understand good faith arguments to be made. And I think a lot of people approach things in, I guess, a way that is considered bad faith, where it's like a very cartoonish, dramatized, exploited image of you're trying to make you're approaching it from the opposite angle of like you're doing your best to not understand something and instead try to impose um basically like a fantasy of like non-reality, um like a straw man, and you take this fantasy or this misunderstanding and you're basically blinded by it. You're like, how can I make this person the greatest villain in my mind? And um and that is the main drive. That's the main, you know, it's like how can you maintain and uh how can you maintain the most villainized perspective or um characterization of a certain individual? How can you make this person a bad guy? How can you like frame um and so forth? And I think a lot of people pretty much approach things in bad faith. I think there's this tendency of for people to demonize other people and so like I've noticed that some people it's like I think some people become so disconnected from other people in this world that no one really faces people. And so when you face someone who has been isolated from social contact, where people just do not contact them, don't talk to them, not in any real honest way. I think a lot of times these people, you confront them and they are on the most insane, warring, offensive, like um outward sort of behavior to the world. And so, like, I think a lot of people are avoided because you don't want to get into the sights of a lot of people. You don't even want to register as perceptible for a lot of people, because anything that is perceptible for some people is something to be warred upon. Um, and so you, um, I noticed this with online interaction, and even in just real life reaction to some extent. And it's like this conquesting sort of crusading mentality of like, um in the Bible it's this idea of like living by the sword, um and it's this offensive nature, I think, of a lot of people have put their stakes on, that um in order to sort of, there's the idea of like the rule of violence, that if you there's the idea that people will compete for power through violence. And I think that's it's just a general idea. I don't know if that's how things actually work out. I kind of don't think so, but I think that's the idea that people have in their mind, that that's the precedent, that people simply compete through power and violence, and that's how you establish yourself into a position of authority and power, is through just violence and intimidation, and essentially like by any means necessary. And I don't know. I think you have these sort of low level power um competitions occurring all the time between people, where it's like they're checking each other, they're intimidating each other, they're putting off a standoffish presence. It's sort of like territorial, and um there's like a domineering, and and people are trying to, like, I guess, establish themselves and to rule, I suppose. Um, it's a weird sort of, I think, unconscious thing for people, or like it's really like I say unconscious, but I mean sort of like a thing that people don't can't really articulate, but it's like these primal sort of drives, I suppose, or like a um I don't really know how to say it. Um but it's like a it's sort of like human behavior, and I think a lot of people don't really recognize human behavior, and by not recognizing it, they're they're operating in ways that are like tropes and um sort of like patterns. Like there's patterns to people's behaviors um and I think people fall into these cliches. Um and I think a cliche that people fall into is actually um being being sort of like a tirade. Um and basically what I think a tirade is like is you imagine a tyranny, right? Nazi Germany, a perfect example. You see the masses, you see the collective, the tyranny of the collective, and the tirators are the people within the tyranny who are acting in a tyrannical manner, and it's like a trope. Um it's a pattern. Like there's certain characterizations to it that are similar to others, that like it's like a template that repeats itself. It's like a cookie cutter. And I think people are they can be very difficult to understand. I know people would disagree with that outright and say, oh, people are just. Some people claim to just perfectly understand or like know everyone how everyone operates, but I think that's narcissistic. Um, I think people are difficult to understand sometimes, especially like trying to understand something like tyranny, how and like psychopathy, trying to understand specifically really dark things. Um, I I think they can be a challenge for people to understand and to like try to solve. It's not. I think the issue with tyranny is thinking that um it was something that is like one and done and it's not gonna happen again. That we somehow solved tyranny. I don't think we solved tyranny. I think that I think that um sure we the United States and the allies and stuff, they defeated Nazi Germany in World War II, and there's a great sort of um there's a great sort of like it's like a cancer that just shrank, and it essentially, I want to say, kind of went into remission of sorts, or that it like went away, I suppose. I know a lot of people would disagree with that, but I do think like World War II, Nazism was essentially defeated. But but there's still traces of the ideology still left, and it's like infiltrated into fringes. But the thing is like that itself can act like it can spread again, and 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 I do see sort of, I guess you could say, fascist or like unapologetic, like Nazistic beliefs just Semitic beliefs and saying Hitler was right. And I can understand some of that being a joke, but I think some of it really isn't a joke, especially now. And there's people who really, I think a lot of times people they want to believe in something. Um they want a solution. They want to somehow make their life better. And a lot of times they feel that way because the way that their life is, they're dissatisfied with it, or that there's great struggle. And so they want um to think that the thing that they're reaching for is something that's going to quench their thirst or to satisfy their hunger. I think a thing that happens with people who are like desperate, like it's a actually like a common motif. It's like a motif that I've seen somewhere where you have someone that's like starving in a desert and thirsty. They start to have like mirages, and then like they're so desperate for anything to drink that they'll like drink a cactus or something. They'll drink the liquid out of a cactus, and when they do this, it's like a giant mistake, and like it sends them on like a delirium and toxic experience, and causes great illness, like causing it'll cause them to like throw up and stuff. I think there's like some truth to that. Like that might actually be a thing. I mean, you and and sometimes that can actually make the problem worse. And I see this with people in certain ideologies, with like fascism and communism and these ideas that are posed as great solutions, and people are just reaching for it like it's going to help satisfy them in some way. um it's like a form of desperation, and at a certain point it's like people will they want to they want to believe in something so bad that they are willing to believe in a lie. They're willing to believe in a story that it's not true, and but they want it to be true. And I think this is where it kind of gets complicated, where it kind of gets I get the idea of pride in my mind, where you have a spirit that is like lowly and protesting against like the heavens, and it's a spirit that is basically at odds with God himself. And um it it's it's this it's like thinking that you essentially know better than God or something, that what you are putting forward needs to be the way that reality is. It's like trying to um it's like trying to change the weather, I suppose. There's got to be a better analogy than that, but um it's like a plant that's growing. um it doesn't A plant that is seated in the shade um doesn't ask of the sun to provide more light. Instead, the plant that is growing, excuse me, tries to make its own way towards the light, towards towards greater enlightenment. And the plant may have to sort of traverse through darkness and overcome harsh conditions like concrete and like the inhabitable, you know, um, like toxicity and all these things, and it's an imperative of evolution to navigate these obstacles and to work towards the light. It's like it's growth, it's becoming. And and a plant, when it's sprouting, it doesn't demand perfect material conditions. It doesn't demand that the sun somehow give it light through all of the shaded, areas. Um, Demand that there be no shade or whatever. It it basically takes um responsibility upon itself to reach the light. You know what I'm trying to say? It's like um it's this dynamic of like, I guess, responsibility and I suppose blame. And I think the spirit of pride is something that puts blame onto God or like the universe and so forth. And instead of, I don't think it's always an issue of how the universe caters to you, but rather how you adapt to the conditions in front of you. And the thing is not every seed that sprouts is going to find the light, and that's okay. And that's like, you can't it's kind of implausible to want everything that want every plant to have the perfect material conditions to grow. I think sometimes that inhabitable that inhabitable challenge is actually the perfect thing for growth. Um, and to kind of understand and map out the universe, you know what I mean? Like there's um to learn how to navigate, and 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 I feel this way with people. Like I think a lot of people, they demand the perfect material conditions for everybody, that everyone can thrive and that everyone be catered the perfect um amount of resources, wealth, social conditions, and so forth. And and there's something about that I think is, there's the idea of like, okay, everyone deserves clean water and to be fed. And to me, that's like saying every plant deserves sunshine and water and so forth. And and that's quite the thing to try to rectify. It's it's quite the task. Um, I tend to believe that enlightenment is a sort of individual pursuit that, you pursue your own enlightenment. And that may seem sort of selfish or individualistic, but I believe in heroicism, and that um heroicism is achieved through personal enlightenment, and that like heroicism is sort of like the thing that is um the epitome of that growth and development and becoming, um this sort of thriving, you know what I mean? And and the challenging of great obstacles and so forth. And and I believe heroes are often a minority. They're very commonly a minority. It's very commonly, a single individual. Maybe they have some helpers, um, but yeah, and heroes can help to uplift things around themselves, like a village, you know, or like a domain, like turning an area that is inhabitable into habitability, kind of like a place that is barren and scorched, into something that is like a prairie and a field, and returning wildlife. And so there's, you could have a place that is perhaps like dystopian, or a place that's in ruin, a place that is rubble, and um like a dragon has just completely destroyed a whole city or town or village. And the hero, through the hero's journey, is able to sort of defeat the dragon and help bring prosperity. And you know what I mean? To where before it's like um ruin, and then after the restored and thriving village or whatever. And that's kind of like, I think that's kind of a motif. Um and I think that's something people perhaps are after, is like there's um the pre state and the post state, where there's, you know the village that's tyrannized by a dragon and is destroyed. You have the dragon that's defeated by the hero, and then you have people returning to the village and the rebuilding, and the village that begins to prosper again. And and I want to sort of rectify, or tie all these things together, because um the idea that, every plant gets its sunshine, is to demand of the sun that every plant get its sunshine, I think is it's quite the ask, I feel like. Um but perhaps in some ways like a hero is is someone who is able to sort of bring that habitability to something like a place, or region or whatever. And so you have people who, I guess, are dissatisfied with their life, um with their material conditions, their social conditions. And it kind of makes sense. I think environmentally there's a lot of people feel disjointed with the way that things have been. Um, there's a lot of challenges evolutionarily that, there's toxins in the food and in the water. There's environmental pollution and all these things. And um, then you have tyranny. Um, but you have these people that are dissatisfied with the way that their lives are, and what they believe it would bring the solution is like, so like in Nazi Germany, there's a great dissatisfaction. They were in poverty and in debt as a nation and all these things. And they kind of had that utopic vision of like, if the Aryan state ruled and thrived and was returned to some form of greatness. Um, but obviously they went about achieving their utopia in all the wrong ways. And and that's what I think is happening right now. And I think it's a thing that happens, that's been going on repeatedly in history. It's something that, it's like, um they say something like, oh, communism, it hasn't really been done before. And I actually genuinely haven't really heard anyone say that except for people who are trying to debate against communism. But um, communism hasn't, just because something has failed before doesn't mean that it can't work. And there's something about it where it's like, okay, um, you're running into failure over and over and over and over and over. But you know, if we could think more abstractly and be like, okay, imagine there's required conditions for success, and like a certain pass key or something that's required, and it's like only through that you're able to obtain success. And I think what's happened is like why the failure has been a reoccurring issue is that people don't really people aren't doing what's required for success. um and instead they're basically acting in this very completely unconstrained manner where it's just chaos. And it's like just throwing paint at a wall. And and that's not how you paint the Mona Lisa, right? And I mean, um, just generally speaking, right? And it's like there's a certain way in which going about it, where you, in order to create that desired image. And it's like refusing to use a paintbrush, it's like in a weird way, I think if people really cared about these goals, they would try to, if they really cared about achieving them, they would go about it in ways that are proper. They would go about it the right way, you know. But instead, you have people that I suppose go about it the wrong way. And so you have people that go through these revolutions, and they often end in disaster, where people are left worse off, you know. And um all right, one sec, let me get some water. Yeah, I don't know, it's weird. It's completely strange to me because the Machiavellian idea of that ends justify the means. Um, Basically, the idea that, if your goal is good enough, that all is permitted in order to try to achieve the goal. And in a weird thing, that in that space where all is permitted is like you have the antithetical, um, and the improper. I mean, quite by definition. You have the sabotagical. You have the counter productive. Um, and I think there's something about that where, you have what is productive and you have what is not productive. And I think the thing with Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, and like Maoist China, and other communist revolutions and so forth, state whatever, you know, um, these fascist states and stuff, is they go about things in a counterproductive manner. Um, they allow for too much counterproduction. It's weird. It's fucking so weird to think that, you know Nazi Germany was a failure. That the Soviet Union was a failure. A lot of people don't really recognize this, but they didn't achieve their desired goals. Um, but it's like, their desired goals. Um, they went completely sideways. Um, like from their goals to what the reality was, I I don't know if you could really be further from the goal than the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany, where there's greater disparity in wealth, differences in wealth, um, um, you want utopia, but instead you get dystopia, right? You get tyranny. Um, Basically, like you get hell instead of heaven, you know. Um, and you know that I think it's we should really study that because it's I think it's very worthwhile to study failure. Um, Failure is like a organism that like a failed organism is like a creature that has failed along its path. Like you can see where it was headed, but it went way the fuck off in the wrong direction. And like you take that with a scientific approach and you say, okay, here's its desired coordinate, and here, um, it ended up way the fuck over here. And you're like, what the fuck happened here? Um, and there's often the idea that people have when it comes to tyranny and like Hitler and stuff. Um, like this villainous sort of idea of like maybe the tyranny was actually the tyranny and the destruction and like the ashes and the ruin and the death and unconsciousness of like anti-life, um the antithetical, there's a lot of different words to use, um the anthropic, anti-life, anti-human, sort of like villainous, um sort of antithetical ideal, I suppose, or like it's it's a strange thing to ponder, honestly. um but it's there's this idea of like, well, maybe that was the goal. Like maybe that was actually, I remember Jordan Peterson talking about, you see, you try to infer the motivations by the outcomes, and you think of, not like, perhaps not what people say, but the outcomes and the death and destruction and chaos, the mass rapes, the theft, the thievery, the barbarism, the tearing down of the destruction, the inhabitability, the ruin, the perhaps directionlessness or like lack of moral compass. And it's like throwing away the moral compass, right? And trying to make your own way. It's like, man. And I honestly think that right now in 2026 is like there's a lot of this happening again, I don't think it's really like a thing that you can easily say is like left or right. I think it's more so on the left, but it's like there's some of it on the right. Like you have it seems like a rise of like um a rise of extremist ideologies and it's I think a growing desperation that people are trying to find a solution, like a radical solution. And instead of a solution, actually finding a solution, it's a radical attempt at a solution, and sometimes these attempts result in catastrophic failure. Um it's like it's hard to come up with a good analogy for some of this stuff. You're drinking ocean water for intense thirst, and you end up like seasick and um sick from drinking ocean salt water. Like you're not supposed to do that, and you're doing shit that you're not supposed to out of desperation. And I want to help people with avoiding this desperation. And I I do think trying to live honestly and tell the truth, and to not lie is actually an amazing rule to try to follow, to really try to put your life in order. Um, I think through telling the truth, people can actually, through the truth, people can navigate themselves in a spiritual manner that that can and I believe that telling the truth can route people in a spiritual manner to um, personal evolution and adaptation. Um, that through truth, people can navigate towards grace and transcendence. Um, that if you operate only through truth, um, it can route you towards enlightenment, um, adaptation, evolution, these different things, grace, and and through the truth, you get um things more attuned and properly functioning. Um, there's all these positive of reaffirming signals and affirmations, I believe, that occur when you try to live a life that's virtuous. People might not believe that, And I think that's because people don't really put in a great effort. Um, and a lot of people don't really stick with it. They'll maybe try to do a good deed that they come up with, like, um, people will try to do a good deed and they expect something out of it. And it's not really how it works. There has to be, it has to be like a genuine desire to do good and to just be, to just test it out for yourself, like what if I just try to do things right, what if I what if I sorry, let me switch things up here. Like what if I just try to tell the truth and see what happens? What if I stop lying and see what happens? And just stick with that. Um and it's like a practice, I think. A lot of people might not really um some people really might struggle with it. I definitely have, but um I think it's something that's helped me in my life and helped me develop discernment. It, um and there's been things that have like changed my life um on this path. Things that on the journey, it's like opening a chest in a video game. You're on a journey and you open a chest and you acquire a new like item or something, um or someone reveals something to you, and you wouldn't have made it there. You wouldn't have made it to that place unless you took the proper route, you know. Um and it's like taking on the main quest of your life. And I think a lot of people don't really do that. I think a lot of people, they want a form of purpose in their life, and people come to these alternative means of like last ditch efforts and stuff. Um, People seek all kinds of things to satisfy them in life. Um, in a way, it's like people go to extremes, and um, I don't know. I I think a lot of people are compelled by stories that they are pretty much sold on when it comes to like what constitutes like a life worth living. Some people think it's like partying, doing drugs, basically like reckless behavior, just live fast, right? Live fast, die young. That idea. People believe that's like the best life that someone can live is to live fast and die young. Um, I I kind of disagree. I think the best life that people can live is the life that is most attuned to the highest good. And that life that is um most, I guess, true, most um perhaps like virtuous or whatever, um a life that is most loving, I suppose, a life that is most see, I think like the ideal of the hero is a representation of love, like what love looks like. And if people could be that love, that that is the most life, that is the most like rewarding thing people can pursue, is actually a hero's journey. And it's crazy cuz I think a lot of people don't really believe that. um I think if you follow your own dreams, I think if you the camera's probably been unfocused for a while, but I think if you follow your dreams, and your dreams are going to be on the pathway, on the road of truth. um you're whenever you work towards your dreams and they get fulfilled in any little way, you make a little progress and your dream starts to become true. There's nothing um that is like that. I've taken psychedelics. I've done, I don't know, man. I've been in relationships. Um I haven't really done hard drugs, but man, I don't really think I need to, cuz I mean, I've done things like MDMA, and I've had crazy trips. Don't get me wrong. I've had mind-bending experiences that essentially broke reality. Like I felt like I broke the matrix, like I finally escaped the matrix and was free. And it was really radical and intensely euphoric, um and just mind bending. But there's something about pursuing your dreams that that I feel is more important than um I think pursuing dreams is, I mean, people talk about it all the time, but there's an element to reality where it's like what is the purpose of reality, you know? um is it to toil and in a stupid way and to be a nobody and all this stuff? I think we're given experiences in life and challenges that, if we could really learn from them, they help us improve for the better. And we're a lot of people are born in really difficult circumstances and born with problems and problem situations and very complex problems. And these problems, when we try to solve them and and we find solutions, these are the things that um I think that's kind of the purpose, is like is the hero's journey, in solving problems, solving really real um important problems, and to have a part or to take part, um to participate in that process. I think that's a gift. I think that's in some ways like the purpose of life itself is the opportunity to to live the hero's journey. Um and yeah, I and I think anything that really isn't that, anything that is um a life that is not following your dreams, a life that is not um I don't know, like a mundane life where um I don't know, I just think of like ideals, and I think in some ways it's like those ideals are are obviously better, you know, and and there's like these counter ideals, and I think those paths that people take that are counter ideal often are very, I don't know, littered with difficulties and um I feel like there's some form of like positive affirmation and like negative affirmation, um sort of like crossroads where you know you have a good path and then you have a negative path, and I feel like um people, there's the high road versus um I don't know, like a downward spiral, I suppose. And that those crossroad decisions are really important, and there's a sort of feedback with the decisions you make in life, and that some decisions, like whether you're choosing between life and death, like you're there's feedback associated with those, and and I think if people choose well, they choose the good, that there's a positive feedback associated with that, where when people choose the negative, there's a negative feedback associated with that. And that's to sort of, I think, um help us route our way forward. um and So, like, if you've ever really been to rock bottom, and sometimes rock bottom isn't really, um, rock bottom can go lower, um, but it's like you're gonna have something in your mind, something telling you, you gotta crawl the hell up and out of this. And that is the best thing you can do. Um, then there'll be another voice that's like self-destructive, where it's like, oh, if you, I've dealt with thoughts like this before, where it's like, oh, if you self-destruct, it's really dark, but it's like, if you end your life, you can start a new life, um and you'll get a fresh slate. You'll have good health. You will have a fresh opportunity. All the mistakes you made is like, um I think a lot of people, they just want to start new. They want to be young again. But um you know that path of self-destruction is, I think it causes a lot of problems, and it's it's a path that I think there's a lot of lies and stuff to it. Um like um there's long lasting injury, I suppose, and scars that I live with from previous self-harm. I used to binge eat on junk food. Like, and being in a place like that, where, my weight, where I'm gaining weight, and getting fat and stuff, and getting addicted. It's more and more addicted. The further along I go, I I get I got I got to a really self-destructive place where it's like, I just kind of want to start over. And I continued to pretty much like binge and self-destruct, and um hoping that it would kind of expedite this process of self-destruction so I could start new. And um you know I realized that when I caused myself, I guess, like a health scare through doing that, I feel like I ended up having sort of like this experience where it's like my brain was like short circuiting. It's like I woke up in the middle of the night, and um just talking about this. It's like I woke up in the middle of the night, and it's like my brain was like kind of like frying. I don't know how to say it, but um it was like like a computer that was like glitching out and freaking out and stuff. And I could literally see like light, and and it's like my brain was like breaking. Um like the computer was like malfunctioning, And it it kind of freaked me out, and I it startled me. Um, because it was like I could see sort of like a transcendental light, the kind that I would see like on psychedelics. It's like when the veil sort of cracks a little bit and you can see like the afterlife or something, um and and I recognize like that was like a rock bottom moment for me. And I went outside, I went for like a run, and I just started apologizing to God, and um I just felt sorry, and I knew I had made a mistake, um and that was a moment for me that I'd like to turn away from. And um that was like a rock bottom moment where I wanted to rise, cuz I honestly, there's a persistence about that rock bottom too, where I was battling with myself and like wanting to break the addiction, and wanting, you know, I wanted, at the time I was off the carnivore diet, and I wanted to get back on it. I kept trying. And like when I had that experience, I was like, I remember, I think I like just got back on, like I tried again, I just tried again. And I think I recognized more and more through that rock bottom shit that um I gotta stop fucking playing around. I gotta like I gotta stop doing all drugs. I gotta stop eating junk food. I gotta stop binging. I gotta just eat carnivore diet because it's worked for me before. And that was one of those moments where it's like there's all these negative, where there's a lot of negative feedback, and it was the feedback I needed to help me get back on the right track. And to help me find my way, I suppose. Like it was helped me discern. You know what I mean? Because I had so many fucking people tell me, "Oh, I should just eat a balanced diet. I should go fuck myself and just like be like everyone else and just eat junk food and um just be like everyone else, to not do a carnivore diet, um to do moderation, and um but I pretty much was like, fuck that. Fuck that. I need to not succumb to addiction, and the only way I know how to do that is through hard fucking abstinence, through fucking everything. And it's helped me now for years. I fucking quit everything, like junk food. Uh I quit fucking drugs. I quit taking psychedelics even. I quit smoking weed even. I was even into like hard drugs. I didn't do hard drugs, but I knew I would have. It was the binge eating that was like the hard drug for me. That's what I leaned on because I knew I was headed for poly drug addiction, and so I just leaned on just binge eating. I would eat just cookies and cookies from McDonald's. Um, I would just eat so many fucking cookies, bro. And to some people that might be like a fucking dream. Like to me, that's what I thought would be like the greatest fucking thing ever, is if I could just eat all the fucking cookies I wanted, bro. But I fucking tried that shit. Fuck no. Fuck no. That shit will make you feel so. I can't even describe it. It's like you'll get a short term, like, dopamine hit from that shit, but it wears off so quick. It wears off before you're done eating, bruh. Like, you'll be eating, like, binging. It's like a fucking amazing high at first. It tastes crazy, but then you're going and going, and then by the end of it, it's starting to taste like fucking, like, bleach and fucking, like, chemicals and shit. Like, it doesn't even taste like food, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, it's starting to taste like fucking Comet, if you guys know what that is, which is like a bleach cleaning product. You're like, fuck. And like mold and all this shit. And it's like you don't even enjoy it. And then you're like getting fat, you don't really feel confident, you lose your social abilities, you lose your confidence, you don't want to talk to people, and just everything gets out of whack, and it's like a downward spiral, and it made me like suicidal, um and I got myself out of that shit, and I don't and it's been years now, and I don't claim that shit is easier now, but you know to be honest, like, I don't fucking know if I'll, like, stay here on Earth for very long. Like, I don't know. There's lots of days, like almost every day. Like, my health is just so, like, fucked up that um I can't really do anything except like lay down. Like, the thing is that people who deal with like ill health will tell you that, like, they'll be in bed for too long, where when you're in bed for too long, it's it starts to fuck with you. It's actually, it gets really uncomfortable, and yeah, I can't really imagine that it's the best for you, but um it's not like fucking sleeping in or anything. It's like, imagine sleeping in, but you're forced to just lay in bed for another 6 hours after you've slept in. Um, I don't know, maybe that would be like a dream for people, but um, like, a lot of times I won't even like eat anything. Um, I won't even eat anything till like later in the day because of that. And normally I'd try to eat breakfast, so like, I don't know. Um, I don't want to bitch too much, but some of my days have just been um completely in bed, pretty much with my eyes closed, and I don't know, like, if it's fucking my time to go, you know what I mean? Um and and I still don't know, like, I genuinely ask, like, like, am I gonna die? Like, I don't know. I and I don't know. Like, there's a lot of times I can't play video games. I can't do a lot of shit. Um, Sometimes I don't even listen to music or whatever. I just sometimes I just sit in silence and maybe I just think or something. Um, I don't know. Sometimes I call it like the come down. You know, you where there's like no dopamine, and I actually really like those times because there's no dopamine in that. Um, like basically like depression and stuff. Like I actually really love depression. Um, I don't know why. I don't know. I like to fucking be alone. I like to get away from the fucking noise. I like to just get away from everyone in a way. I like to be by be by be by myself, and I don't know. I like to fucking feel things. I like to feel really horrible emotions and think about really dark shit. Um, I read this book, The Rape of Nanking, and that's kind of the shit that I have to like process in my mind, and then I think about other people. Um, and I just let myself think, And a lot of people, it's like a storm, and a lot of people can't really handle that shit because they're not really used to letting themselves go through that. Like it's fucking brutal for me. Um, and a lot of fucking people, I don't know. I think that it does a lot of people in when they do that shit. But I've, I want to say I've gotten used to it, or at least it seems to get better. But sometimes I think it can get worse. Um, I don't know, but I think I mean, cross my fingers. I feel like I've kind of learned to deal with it. Um, that I kind of expect it, and yeah, I don't know. There's And the thing is too is like I try really hard to get my shit together and to be a good person. I try to make sacrifices to like to not be a piece of shit. Um and I it's weird how like internet popularity works. I I know no one watches my videos right now. I don't know if people will. I've like this is I could be talking to absolutely no one right now. Um, like maybe it'll just end up in like kind of like a landfill, internet landfill. But um, I don't know. Maybe it's just putting the energy out there, you know. And I want to just keep making videos. I actually want to make like really long videos, like 3 hours and shit. I want to do them very often. Um, I I don't know, man. Sometimes I feel like, you ever feel like there's like an emotion that you want to feel, but you feel like you struggle to feel it? Um, I don't know. I It's weird to say this, but I feel like I want to be depressed. I don't feel depressed right now, but like it feels like I need to process some things, and um I don't know. I think there's like I say I think a lot, but there's I think life is hard enough as it is, and that when you deviate in life and make things harder for yourself and other people, it's like, I don't know. I think we should all just try to get on the right track and try to be good people, and do our best, and to try to not be toxic, to not play into toxic things. And right now you see um this response, this sort of fight fire with fire response of people acting um with like Nazi tactics against Nazism. And it's like, oh my god. I just, you see, I want to say misunderstanding. Like, I can't believe how fuck, I don't know. It's like so many fucking people are just so hysterical in this fucking world these days. They're so just off the rocker and unhinged, and have no fucking chill and all this shit. And I want to understand why. Like what is it that leads people just so off track, like what happened with Nazi Germany? How can we avoid that? You know, you can have an answer like love, but I mean, like, I don't know. I really want to. I don't know. I want to see the world just get on the right track and just not fucking fall into tyranny and chaos. And I want to see people be good. I don't want to see people be nihilistic. And all right, I think I'll end the video here, guys. Thanks for watching. Peace out. Much love. If anyone's watching this, thank you for watching. I appreciate the engagement. People might be hate watching this. I don't know. It's like I said, what type of fame, you know? I don't know if I want fame. I I do want to make these videos though, like, and I do want engagement. Um, but yeah, more on that in a different video maybe. All right, thank you guys for watching. Peace.